Stephanie Phillips, thank you very much for jumping on an episode of My Smart Podcast with me. And everyone, I'd like to introduce you to an incredibly bright lady that I've had the opportunity to have some great conversations with. Very, very logical. And she's a great leader, both in business and is jumping into politics. Stephanie, tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you throw your hat in the ring.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I have been in Las Vegas for 30 years. So pretty much my entire adult life has been here. And I've been in the real estate business that whole time. I have my own company and I started that 18 years ago, coming up on 19 years pretty soon. And I jumped into politics back during COVID. And I didn't like what they were doing to us with all these mandates, with closing our schools and churches and telling us small businesses were non-essential and you had to take a jab in order to keep your job. Everything that was happening was so un-American, and I didn't recognize the country that I was living in. So I jumped into politics and got involved in all kinds of clubs, all the campaigns I could help out with in the 22 cycle. I did podcasts. I did everything I could to be involved and to learn. And I decided then that I was going to run. And I wanted to run for this seat because we don't have any representation on our side at this level. And I look at some of these candidates that jump into our races, and there's carpetbaggers, opportunists. There are people that are not doing it for the right reasons. And I'm just, I'm a mom. I'm a Blue Star mom. I have 2 kids, and I want to leave a country for my kids and my grandkids. And at the rate we're going, we're getting ready to lose our country if we don't step in. And I just want to represent Nevada for the right reasons and to give them representation and give them a voice and to protect them and protect our kids and our veterans. And I see a real need there. And my whole career, I have served people. And that's really what I do. I negotiate for people and I mediate for them. I advocate for them and bring 2 sides together for a common goal. And all of those skills and things that I've been doing my entire life really come into play in the political arena. And that's what you're doing. If you're doing it right, you're doing the same things for your constituents.
I agree. Some of the questions that I ask on My Smart Podcast can be kind of cookie cutter. Hey, what's the biggest challenge you see in your business? Or what's the biggest challenge you see entrepreneurs making? Things like that. In politics or in our nation, let me back up from politics. In our nation right now, what's the number one problem and the number one cause that you see?
Well, gosh, it's really hard because there's a lot competing for that number 1 spot.
That was a broad spectrum question, wasn't it?
My goodness. People talk about the border. That is urgent. We are unsecured as a nation. That is promoting even more sex trafficking, fentanyl, terrorists. You name it, they are coming over our border and wreaking havoc. We as taxpayers are paying for these illegal immigrants to be shipped all over our country. And with the trafficking, there's been a lot of light put on that lately with that movie, Sound of Freedom. And a lot of people have seen that, and people were unaware that this problem is so huge. There's estimated to be 6 to 8 million kids worldwide who are being held as sex slaves. And here in the country, in America, we are the number 1 consumer in the world. And it is absolutely astounding that we don't have more resources and money being put towards these federal task forces to stop this trafficking and really do some meaningful change with that. So that's at the top of my platform. It is children and veterans and accountability in DC and protecting our nation and putting America first. But also with that number one spot is I hear a lot from parents, and this is from both sides of the aisle and in between. It's what they are doing to our kids in these schools and the indoctrination that is going on with this ideology that they're forcing down their throats, and a very graphic sexual curriculum and books that they're putting in schools, so much so that parents, when they stand up at a school board meeting, their microphone is cut off from reading excerpts from some of these books. And if you can't put excerpts like that on the 6 o'clock news or print them in the local newspaper or speak publicly about them, why are our kids reading this stuff? And they also are destroying girls' sports because they're allowing biological boys to be in their sport programs and also in their locker rooms and bathrooms and private spaces. And they are protecting the rights of that one child, but they're forgetting about all of the girls that don't feel protected and don't feel safe and are losing scholarships because they're having to compete against a biological boy. I don't agree with any of that.
I will have to go on record as saying that just seems ludicrous. The entire push seems ludicrous, to be disrespecting either side, male or female. And by sides, I mean to say male or female, either sexes. They shouldn't be sides. And you talk about some of the curriculum that's being taught. I think about an awful lot of curriculum that is not being taught, or a lot of messaging. I'm not an educator. I am not a psychologist. I don't have an acronym after my last name. I don't have a degree on the wall. I'm almost a 54-year-old guy that has some experiences and some opinions. And when I look to 9/11 was just yesterday, right? Or a couple of days ago, rather. And got my flag up in the neighborhood and went for my morning walk. And towards the afternoon, I noticed both morning and night, I was the only guy, not that I'm looking for credit here, I was the only guy in the neighborhood besides one other guy, very, very deep in the deepest cul-de-sac in our neighborhood. Not that the positioning of the house, necessarily matters, but that driving up and down the street, that walking up and down the street, seeing that patriotism, hearing it, feeling it. It's so quiet. It's so subtle. I don't want to say it doesn't exist. It does. It's just subtle. And I would say that it's subtle at best in our schools. The statistical reports, I think statistics sometimes can be twisted to tell any truth that someone wants to tell. But I haven't heard an argumentative statistic that's saying, no, patriotism's through the roof in all age groups, especially our youth. It's off the radar. It's not even registering. And that's going to weaken a nation. It's going to weaken a neighborhood. It's going to weaken, everything. And for those that think that that's not important and that that's conspiratorial, I in the last 2-3 minutes here, I talked way too much, Stephanie. I really want to give you the floor and have you share your thoughts. But when I ask you a question like, what do you see as our biggest problem? That's so broad. You can just list them. Ding, 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 ding. Go right down the list. I think at the very top of it is an intent to divide. And that intent to divide is, to me, communism. It's a Soviet doctrine and going into other nations. And it seems like the playbook is just showing itself more than ever in a way that's not even trying to hide itself anymore. I mean, what do you think about that?
No, that's very true. A lot of things that you say, they say divide and conquer. And that's what they do. And they've been dividing us for quite some time. And as far as patriotism and the flags and the things that you mentioned, during 9/11, we were so united as a country because you saw people coming together all over the nation. And it didn't matter what your race, background, religion, we were Americans. And we saw flags everywhere on cars, houses, everywhere we went, sporting events. It was so great to see that. And in my neighborhood, there's a lot of homes that have their flags flying, and I do too, in front of mine. And I have traveled all over the state of Nevada. And when I go into the rurals and go into these small towns, it's amazing how many flags that you see. And even in some of these towns, they put them along the roadway, lots of them. And I am so encouraged when I see that, because that's what's important. There's some people on one side that look at our American flag and call it racist. And they talk down about it. They have implemented CRT in some of these schools across our nation. And that is teaching our kids to hate America and to think that we are a racist nation and all of this. And there's always going to be that one bad apple, so to speak. And there's always going to be that element that is racist or hateful or, whatever you want to call them. But I don't believe we're as divided as what the media and what they would have us believe. Because I talk to a
No,
lot
I
of
agree
people
with you.
on both sides of the aisle, and we agree on a lot of issues. So I don't believe it's like what they say.
I don't either. If you've got a much smaller segment of society, and I'm no expert here, but a very small component of society controlling our media, film production, post production, live stream, of course, mainstream news, and the programming. Let's go to children's programming. Hate to bash on old Disney too much here, but it's so easy, unfortunately. That great place that I, grew up thinking Disney was wonderful. Well, at some point, and I don't know when, I do very much contribute children's programming to the lack of reverence and disrespect for either parents or authority figures. And I don't mean to say, hey, we're in an authoritarian society. I'm probably the most defiant guy ever, that on the other side of the podcast here with you, Stephanie. But where's the personal responsibility and where's the discussion? Where's the discussion of baseline virtue and where's that curriculum? And where's the discussion with the school district? When I think about politics, when I think about a judge, a part of my life, I do have a dog in the fight and a great interest in keeping our families together and or keeping our nation together. And the family law arena and lawyers and judges, I find it much harder to approach them and have a very good, astute conversation than anyone in the school district, administrative levels, school levels, the teachers are probably the most outspoken, but how do we create that feeling of patriotism, just like 9/11? And I'm not saying maybe the level of energy, because that was a very high energy level, but how do we, as a nation, in all of our regions, communities, big metropolitan centers, and otherwise, create that same feeling of solidarity for each other as Americans, rather than here's this group and here's that group and here's this disenfranchised group over there and here's this victim group over here, and then the way those victim groups are going to react are with violence. I mean, I know some riots and stuff are some years past us, but I don't necessarily see the sentiment changing. I still see people have this opinion over here, people have this opinion over here, and it's not even close. It's divide. It's true divide with anger and resentment. So how do we create that love and patriotism for each other, regardless of these silly labels that have been placed on all of us over the past seeming like 4 years more than ever, 4 to 6 years?
I believe a lot of that starts in the home with the parents, and it also carries over into our schools, because kids spend so much time in school. And when I went to school, we said prayer and we said the Pledge of Allegiance and we learned about America, and we were proud of our country and we were proud of our flag and what that stood for. And it's all about how we teach our kids. And when the kids grow up and learn good things, and they learn what that stands for, and they learn to respect the flag in our country and all of those who fought and died for our freedoms. I think that's where it begins. And we see too often that the schools are teaching our kids other things. And I believe that there is an agenda there. And it's something that we need to fight back on. It's something that we need to come together as parents. And I see all kinds of parents, across the state and across party lines that talk about this. And it's really important that our kids know the truth.
Now, that strikes me as, the kids need to know the truth. Talk about that broad and complicated dialogue, right? I mean,
well, I was just talking to somebody yesterday about schools and the government being involved in raising our kids. I have said so many times, and I'll say it again, the government needs to get out of the business of raising our kids. And when they start to say things like, when your child comes to school and they use a certain pronoun or they identify as whatever it is that they want to identify and they don't have to tell the parents, that's when they create a divide. And that is school against parents. And always it is supposed to be a collective and a working relationship where they support each other because our kids spend so much time in school. And at that age where they're learning, they're very impressionable. And without cooperation from the school and without the parents and those two joining together, that's a recipe for disaster. And the fact that any school would want to hide personal information that the parents should know about their child, I just think that's outrageous, and it's completely wrong.
it's outrageous on so many levels.
It is.
So many levels. The feeling that our American institutions are not supporting Americans, the feeling that we, the people, are somehow now answering to an overwhelmingly bureaucratic, slow-moving, glacial political and educational system. And why, Stephanie, in your opinion, why or what is the reason for the pushback? What's the reason for resistance? Is it just straight communism, a straight, a complete disregard for our Constitution and what I like to say is the idea of America? You can't touch America, really. It's an idea. The entire way of personal responsibility and freedom is an idea, and it's the idea that's I see is just being eroded and eroded and eroded away. Why? What's the pushback?
I think that there is a very specific agenda that they are trying to accomplish. And if they can control our kids, they control the future of our nation. And I believe very strongly that, and they've been trying to do this for many years. It's just now people are starting to wake up to that fact and they're seeing it. And they're being much more blatant now with that example that I just said about hiding information from parents. And we see now that kids can get gender care without parental consent. They can get an abortion without parental consent. And when you start to erode parental rights and you start to put divide between the parents and kids, that creates all kinds of problems. And that will be the downfall.
I couldn't align with you more. I mean, you might as well absolutely define that as parent alienation.
Absolutely.
Usually that's going on between some bitter divorced parents and things like that. But why wouldn't that be parent alienation on a grand scale? And Stephanie, you said something else I agree with. A few minutes back, you said, we need to put parents back in so many words. We need to put parents back in charge. Well, why aren't parents taking charge? Is it that parents' rights have been removed for so many decades now that they don't know. We don't know. I'll say we the people, we don't know that we're still in charge. And I don't mean that arrogantly or defiantly or anything. I made it from a responsible standpoint and not perfection. I'm probably Captain Mistake if I listed all the mistakes I've made in life, but we're still responsible, still parents. We're still, what's the word I'm looking for? Empowered. Why are we not empowered?
Well, a lot of parents are taking that into their own hands now, and they are putting their kids and are homeschooling them. They're taking them out of the public school system. And there's more and more parents that are doing that. Parents want school choice. There's a lot that is happening, but there are those parents, they're not able to homeschool their kids. They have to go to work or they don't have the time to do that. So they're having to put them in public school because they don't have any other choice. But parents definitely are waking up to what's going on and they are fighting back. And we've seen that the last few years in these school board meetings. And we've seen parents, remove some of these school board members that are on the panel and getting rid of them and replacing them with real parents who are going to protect these kids.
Yeah, no, we are seeing it more and more, and even locally. We saw it first kind of nationally. I don't exactly remember where, but in some school district out of Nevada somewhere. And then all of a sudden, Nevada, that was on the news a couple of months ago. Wait a minute, Nevada, what's going on in Clark County? And it's very real. And you and I have had a few conversations about Power to Parent. That organization and Carla and Aaron and so many people that are doing great work. I mean, some of the stories that we hear from them about the resistance, it's like this resistance. How can it not be an agenda, as you say?
Mm-hmm. It certainly is. That's exactly what it is. And until we stand up and say, we've had enough, we're going to take this back over, we're going to continue the same old thing. And the other thing in Nevada, we keep putting forth the same candidates. We keep putting forth ones that are going to lose in the general election. And in Nevada with politics, we need to be strategic about this race, specifically the one that I am in. And we need to do something different. And I believe a political outsider like myself will be able to win. And there's so many things that are different about me versus the other candidates. And until we do something different and approach it from a different angle, I believe we're going to keep on losing. And I'm tired of losing.
No, I align myself with you on that one. So let's talk about the political machine. And I'm definitely not an expert there, but the political machines or the processes all has to do with money and funding, right? And money and funding, I would say, relates to everything, not just money and funding of efforts and projects and community improvements and things, educational improvements, but money and funding to get regulations passed, get laws passed, and or get laws removed or reformed, in some fashion. So your first day in office, let's put our vision goggles on. Your first day in office, what's the first thing you do?
If the southern border is not secure by then, that needs to be number one. Also, the two-tier justice system that we see in this country, we have so much corruption that we've seen in the FBI, the DOJ. Those things have to stop. And the people who have been targeting Americans and parents, calling them domestic terrorists because they're speaking up at school board meetings, those people need to be held to account. Also, we need to look at the spending that, all these billions of dollars that we're sending to Ukraine. Where's the accountability? Where's that money going? That's our money that they're spending. And meanwhile, we have homeless veterans and kids on our streets. We could use that money in a much different way rather than just continuing to write checks. Also, the trafficking with kids, there needs to be some meaningful change. as far as that goes. And also, a lot of work needs to be done for our veterans.
And I have another why question for you, Stephanie, and this is, love your opinion on this. Why is it so difficult to get a seemingly smaller amounts of money into our communities? I've never been to Chicago, but I haven't heard anything about the supposed south side of Chicago and teenagers killing themselves every week. I haven't necessarily been to some of the areas hit really hard by some weather patterns, or recently rather. I haven't been to Hawaii. I haven't been to the flood areas in the eastern seaboard and the south over the past 3-4 months. Where anyway, why is it so difficult to get monies that is not 40 billion, and do we just throw out military industrial complex? Is it just that simple and too big of an animal to? Is it what was it in 2008 when they bailed out the banks? They said they were they had to be saved. They were systemic failure or something like that. Is that what it is with the military industrial complex? We literally have so much economy in that we need to keep spending money on missiles and other wars, other than the homeless and even the 10,000 children that don't have a bed to sleep on in Clark County, Southern Nevada here. I just throw that stat out there because it's apparently true. It's ridiculous. How do we reroute all of these monies that we have?
I think it's a matter of priority. And of course, funding our military and our law enforcement, that's important. We need to protect our country. And they do need proper funding and resources. But when we send money to foreign countries, we need to really take a look at that. Where are our priorities? We don't want to be in another endless and forever war. Look at Afghanistan and the withdrawal out of there. There are things that we need to reprioritize. And I believe the people that are in there now, this administration, they are destroying our country from within. And to me, it's very intentional. And they have destroyed our oil and gas industry. Look at our gas prices. Look at inflation. He killed the Keystone Pipeline, killed jobs, and just recently killed 7 more land leases in Alaska. Why are they doing these things? We could be energy independent, and we were at one point, and then they came in and changed everything, and now our country is failing. Americans are hurting, and to me, it's just a matter of priority. And we need the people in Congress who are actually going to do the work for their constituents and represent them the right way, rather than being a part of that DC establishment and a part of that elite club. That's what's wrong with career politicians. They get in there, they love the power, the money, and all of that, and they don't want to give up that power, but they're part of the problem. I don't believe it was ever intended for politicians to be in there for decades and decades, like what we see. The guy in the White House has been in there forever. Has he had a real job? Has he ever had to struggle? Does he even know what it's like to be just an average, everyday, ordinary American citizen working hard to support your family? I don't believe he does. So the people who represent us, someone like myself, I know what that struggle is like. I've been in real estate, and I know what that housing crisis looked like in '08, and it was a struggle. And I, seeing these gas prices and grocery prices, and I'm not a wealthy person. So I understand that I'm not going to lose sight of that, which a lot of these politicians in Washington do.
Yeah, we certainly feel that way. The disconnect from both the right and the left, up at several levels of the government, regional, state, and federal. And we've heard a lot of scuttle of late about term limits, putting in rules and regs for term limits and things like that. And then even the ridiculous the term limit laws, regulations that have been proposed. I hear now, well, let's negotiate to push it through, and maybe we grandfather the folks that are in there, which completely defeats the purpose. It's ridiculous. So when we talk about the American citizens' confidence in politics and voting. Now, we've heard a lot of conjecture about the accuracy of voting, the accuracy of the ballots, the accuracy of the different areas. How do we regain that integrity? How do we, as Americans, regain trust in that voting process? Because it doesn't feel good anymore.
Well, we need a national voter ID law, which I will support. And we also need to take back our legislature in this state. And some of those laws they implemented under Sisolak regarding our elections, they did that in the middle of the night. And they did that to, in my opinion, they did that to be dishonest. And we see all kinds of election integrity issues all across this country, and people are not dumb. They know what's going on. They see the statistics, they see the evidence, and we know there was shenanigans going on, and we need to protect our elections, and that's really important. So until Americans have had enough, until we in this state say, okay, we need to go back and change these laws, but we need to take over our legislature. And if we want free and fair elections, we need to get involved in this process. And more people are doing that. And we've had more poll workers and watchers and people really paying attention to what's going on. And I think we need more of that.
Yeah, I would agree. And just the lack of integrity from the individual and or the group that wants to manipulate votes, that is truly evil. That is probably one of the most evil things that can attack us here in America, trying to completely dispel our democracy. Now, debates. This is one question I wanted to ask you, and I have not asked this ever of a local, state level, candidate. The debates, when we see the presidential debates on all the mainstream news channels and things like that, is there a form of debate that you can create or that normally happens while you're running for U.S. Senate?
Mm-hmm. There's actually a debate set up November 9th in Pahrump, and it is for the Senate race. And I believe they've invited all of the candidates. I don't know who it has confirmed, but I will be there. And I also hear there is another set of debates set up in Reno for the middle of January. And as far as any here, I haven't heard any so far.
Gotcha. So November 9th, you say? In Pahrump.
Yes.
The hump to Pahrump. What location? Is it at one of the casino hotels out there? Or?
I believe it's at the Pahrump Community Center.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right on. And Stephanie, I know that you are very busy and you scheduled some time to be on this episode with us at My Smart Podcast, but I also want to hold true to your schedule and get you off to your next meeting. But and I'm going to pop up a banner to just a flash across the bottom of the screen here. But tell us, where's your next campaign event or next couple? How can we come out and see you?
Well, I'm going to be in Mesquite tonight at the Meet the Candidates event there. I am headed to Reno first thing in the morning. I'll be there for 3 days, and I've got a fundraiser tomorrow night at Kylie Ranch. I'll be at the RWR luncheon Saturday, Party in the Pines. When I get back, I have a meet and greet scheduled for September 28th from 6 to 8 p.m., and that is going to be held at Grape Street in downtown Summerlin. And I'm all over the state, and we have lots of events coming up. I also have a virtual town hall meeting that via Zoom, and we do 2 of those a month. And we have people register on my website, which is phillipsfornevada.com, and that's the number 4, phillipsfornevada.com, and you can hit the register town hall button, put your email address in there, and you'll be emailed a link the day of our meetings. We schedule 2 different times during the month, just randomly, and anyone can join. And we have had people join us from all over the state. And I did that because I want to be accessible. And I believe I'm the only candidate that's doing this. And people can ask all kinds of questions. They can have face-to-face time with me, virtually, of course. But we talk about all kinds of concerns for the state and for the country, and it's been really good, and I've enjoyed that. So people can also connect with me on social media. My handle is at Phillips for Nevada, and again, that's the number 4. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, and Truth Social.
Wonderful. Stephanie, again, tremendous appreciation for you coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and most of all, stepping forward to place yourself in a very vulnerable leadership position, which every one of our citizens that goes for office and again, I'll say regional and or state or federal. So I wish you all of the best luck, and I definitely like to have you back on and follow you throughout your race here.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephanie.